Well, good morning. Today we're going to talk a little bit about a place in the world that you may not know much about, but you will be hearing a lot about it in the coming year. It's called the Spratly Islands. Have you ever heard of them? Take a look at them. Here they are. It's a cluster of islands, mostly atolls, in the South Pacific, sort of southeast of Vietnam, south of China, west of the Philippines, and north of Malaysia. These are basically a bunch of little atolls. There's been a dispute about who owns them and who they belong to now, going on for quite some time. The Chinese claim that they've been historically theirs going back centuries, and they even issued a map in the 1940s called the Nine Dot Map, the Nine Dot Line Map, that laid claim to them. Since then, Vietnam has claimed them, the Philippines have claimed them, and a couple of years ago, to cement their claim and to bolster it, they went in there and they began adding and building onto these islands. Some of these are very small. They're only half an acre or so. And they built them up quite a lot. It's amazing they did this in 2 years. But here's what they look like from a satellite these days. You can see where they cut a channel in here through the coral. There's a dock. They've built piers, jetties, and so forth. On this one, they've built a runway, fuel fields, so things like that. And it goes on and on. And these are scattered all over the place down in those islands. They're still not very big. They're, a matter of acres each. But they're rather interesting to look at. And some of their neighbors aren't happy about it. Vietnam is upset about it. They don't want the Chinese to take it because they think it belongs to them. Everybody claims to own them. But what's happening most interestingly is what's going on in the West. The United States, for some reason, has taken a big interest in this area, and I think for some of the silliest reasons. And this article here that appeared on Yahoo Knows, editor's note, this has raised tensions in the region. It has, but not anywhere near to the level that you're going to be seeing coming up in this story. Here we have a bit by James Woolsey. He's an admiral. He worked for the Clinton administration, and he said the U.S. sees itself as the holder of the balance of power in Asia and to protect its allies against Chinese overreach. The CIA, he was the CIA director also under Clinton. China should realize that our reflexes in Asia are not driven by territorial ambitions. Over U.S. objections, think about that. Beijing has moved to cement the claim. All right. Yeah. What they've done is they've gone in there and they've started building up those islands, as you've seen. And further down, here's a recent comment from the foreign minister of China, Liu Kang. He says China already has border treaties with 12 of its 14 land neighbors, and as long as everyone is sincere and patient, the differences can be handled through consultation and negotiation. What's going on is that China needs these islands to be under control. They need to watch them. The Chinese are not militaristic. They haven't done anything militarily. They supplied some weapons to North Vietnam during the war. They didn't send in troops. And the only country in this part of the world that's really been militaristic in the last century is Japan. Japan has attacked not only China but Korea. And I don't know quite why we're worrying about what China's going to do. But here's an article that appeared in the National Interest magazine. It's a military publication. The U.S. Army's long-range missiles could be the perfect tool to neutralize China's artificial islands. Think for a moment how we would react if there was a Chinese military magazine that was recommending that the Chinese send missiles into the Western Hemisphere because they had some sort of right to claim control and watch out over things around here. We'd be pretty upset. Now, this is interesting. This is a story that comes from an unclassified letter written by National Intelligence Director James Clapper. Those that you don't know who James Clapper was, he was the fellow that during the NSA hearings and Edward Snowden admitted to the Congress that under testimony, that he lied. He fabricated stories, and he was famously quoted as saying, "I told the least untruthful thing I could." He's not a person that can be trusted, and he repeatedly was caught not providing accurate information to his own government. And in here he says these islands will provide the ability of China to deploy a range of offensive and defensive military capabilities with a significant capacity to quickly project substantial offensive military power to the region. Mr. Clapper doesn't expect anyone to buy that story because the Chinese already have that ability. They have a very large air force. They have missiles. They have a standing army of over 5 million people. They have a much bigger army than the United States does. And they have a reserve army of over 20 million soldiers. All right? Further on, it goes, in defense of the U.S., we're doing this in defense of U.S. national interests. The rapid development of China's artificial island base presents itself as a looming real-world problem that requires a specific military solution, and soon. No, it does not. What China is doing is very Chinese. I do business in China. I've done business there for 30 years. The Chinese have one thing that they really can't stand, and that's disorder. They cannot live under the notion that this dispute, these disputed islands, could leave open the possibility of any sort of interference with their trade. And what they're doing is they're controlling them. They're putting in the islands to control this region for shipping. China needs a 9%, 8-9% GDP growth every year. The last thing in the world China can afford is a war or military issue. The Chinese, the last thing in the world they're going to do is use these islands as a military expansionist angle. They're not going to do it. They cannot afford it. They cannot afford the disruption that a war would have, or any sort of military action. The Chinese seek order and peace on these issues. All right, yeah, they're communists, but this Cold War nonsense that's starting to come out about China through members of the U.S. military is very disconcerting, and I would strongly recommend that you watch this, and watch this story, and watch how it develops over the next year. All right, because you're going to hear a lot of stuff about what China could do, not what China is likely to do, and why they're doing what they're doing. So watch this space and see what happens. All right? And have a great day. Bye-bye.